Now let me. So you start your basically you're starting your professional career at Drew's Rendezvous every
Yes.
week. Okay. How long were you there, and then where else were you playing after that?
Um, I was there. Danny introduced me to Al Gray.
Okay.
Now, I don't know who got with Basie first, Al Gray or Danny Turner. But they used to always come to our jam session on Saturdays. And this Saturday, Danny or Al Gray bought Barry Harris. Barry Harris fell in love with me, but he wanted me to move to New York. I wasn't going to leave Philadelphia. I didn't know anything about New York. I didn't know Barry. I liked the way he played. He got me a couple of jobs in New York, but they were like cabaret jobs. I told him that I wanted to go to the Village Vanguard or the Village Gate. He said, well, you gotta sing around town. Do you know how many vocalists we have here? Which is true. I was ready to, just jump off and leap off. If McCoy could do it with Coltrane, I could do it. But Barry was accompanying vocalist, but he was also working with different groups. He introduced me to Elmer Gibson, who was a young bud. Now, I don't know how Elmer Gibson got involved in that, but I got Elmer Gibson to play for me at Drew's Rendezvous when Colmar was doing something else. Elmer Gibson got me Charlie Erlin, who was playing tenor saxophone. Charlie Erlin didn't know anything about the organ then. And we used to jam up at Johnny Drew's. Elmer Gibson got me the job down at Emerson's. That's the first job I got at Emerson's. Well, they were used to having rat-a-tat blues, but when I went in there, it was something different. It was something very, very different. At first, I wouldn't say I wasn't accepted, but I had to try to sing over the audience. And that's when I made up my mind then that I'm not going to try and sing over you. And I stopped singing. And I took the mic and I went Hollywood on them. I just told them, you didn't have to pay to come in here to see me. However, I'm going to get paid one way or the other. But I told them, I said, it's impolite because I'm trying to sing to you. Yeah, I heard some crackle laughing and what have you, but guess what? They listened.
Was this the late 50s?
This was the late 50s.
Because that's around the time that Billie Holiday played there. They made that play about her
Emerson's Bar.
At Emerson's, that had to be before then because she died in 58.
Right. Well, towards the end of her life...
She worked at Emerson's?
Yeah.
I
so
know.
About around the same time, within a few years of when you were there.
When I never met her.
Okay.
I never met her, but I knew of her. I met Dinah. Dinah was working at Pep's. I tried to get a job at Pep's, but they didn't want to give me a job there. They wanted me to work in a little bar on the side.
Okay.
But I didn't accept that. But because I didn't sing a blues, or I wasn't a bluesy type singer, they hired Nina Bundy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
They hired Nina Bundy. She and Dinah got along very well. And then Barry Harris again comes into the picture. In 1958, Ramsey Lewis was playing at the Showboat. I went to see Ramsey there. I met he, LD, and Red Hole. And I tried, Herb Keller was the owner.
Right.
I tried to get him hurt. He didn't know, he didn't know nothing about, who's your agent?
Right.
I didn't have an agent. What do you mean, who's my agent? The only thing, Dandy told me that I had to join Local 274. And he introduced me to Skeets Marsh. She was a drummer. Skeets' father, Harry Marsh, was the first president, I think, of 274. Then Jimmy Adams, if I'm not. Jimmy Adams came after that. But I had to go to Local 274 and become a member. And I started working little clubs with different trios around Philadelphia. And Danny McCune used to come by and collect. We used to be so angry. We see him coming every night, every Friday or Saturday night, coming to collect. But that's when I learned about Local 274 and what I had to do to be a singer. Now, I didn't have a real group because I was using this piano player, that piano player. Colmore's wife didn't really want him out to play, and then Coleman had an emotional problem at one time, and sometimes he would work and then sometimes he wouldn't. So I worked with different piano players. I had a guy by the name of John Hopkins that I played with, and he went, I think he went down south. And that really upset me because I worked with him and just had his name on my... Arthur Harper.
Oh. Yeah.
Arthur Harper introduced me to Wilbur Ware.
Oh, okay. Now this happened.
We were in the
you joined the union, right?
Yes.
And meeting all these musicians.
Yes. This was after, because we would go down there every Sunday. You know, you could go down there Sunday after the gigs were over, and they would play up until about 3 o'clock or something. That's how I met Butch and Charlie Rice.
Butch Ballard.
Butch Ballard. Butch was working with orchestras. He had certain orchestras or bands that he was working with out on the main line. Chaz was working with Tiffany 5. He and Dottie Smith. I met the Furnace Brothers. Now, let me tell you about Chaz. Chaz was my neighbor. He lived on 47th Street between Haverford and Fairmount. And
Just for the record, we're talking about Charlie.
Charlie Rice.
So people listening to this tape might not know.
Might not know who Chaz is.
Yeah, okay.
Charlie Rice lived on 47th Street between Haverford and Fairmount Avenue. And of course, Charlie Rice was my brother's age. But he was so handsome and so debonair. He always had his tie tied. I never knew that Charlie Rice made all of his clothes.
Yeah, he did.
And he would come up Fairmount Avenue, and the same time every day, he had a friend that lived at 59th and Haverford Avenue. And I would run outside. I'd be 16 or 17. I'd run outside and sit on the steps, and I would say, "Hi, Chaz." And he would say, and from a little girl, I was always, but see, he was on the road.
Right.
He was on the road all the time. So Chaz was the one who really introduced me to Butch Ballard. And then I met, we're talking about the 60s now, and I met Donnie Smith, and I started meeting so many. I met Demeter Joe. She was with the Red Caps, Steve Gibson and the Red Caps.
That's right.
And I went to see Steve Gibson and the Red Caps at Club Harlem. They opened up on a Thursday night.
Are you talking about Atlantic City?
Atlantic City.
That's
No, that one is, that's over now.
Yeah.
Well, that's because I know on the bio that Wendy gave me of you that you worked a lot down in Kentucky Avenue, and
I didn't work a lot. I worked at Club Harlem because I worked with Johnny Lynch's band.
yeah. Tell me about that. What years were you in Atlantic City?
between 63 and 64, 63 to 65, because when I met Demeter Joe, she was working at Club Harlem, and Milt Buckner was working at Little Belmont. Now, how I got to meet Milt Buckner, his drummer, Maurice St. Clair, was from Buffalo, New York. And they came over to see Demeter Joe and Steve Gibson. I think Maurice was Jamaican. And I became mesmerized with him because he was the first man that I saw who had hair to his shoulder, black male, who had hair to his shoulders, and he wore his hair in Shirley Temple curls. But he was an excellent drummer. He was with Milt Buckner for years. And of course, I was just mesmerized by him and his accent, you know. I don't know if it was put on or what, but it was all right for me.
So what was the Atlantic City scene like back then?
Well, see, remember, I'm a Philadelphia girl. When I saw them in Atlantic City, I would be working in Philadelphia. I only worked 3 places. I did the Johnny Lynch, and I'm trying to think of the guy that had the dancers. Pitney.
Oh, yeah, I know who you mean. The Smart Set.
Yeah, what was his name? It starts with a P.
Yeah, because Sam Reed used to play for him.
Yes.
I'll look it up.
Yeah,
he was a promoter.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they had a regular show going. And Johnny Lynch's band played for them. And he got, what is this? It's Pitney something. They had the dancers. Well, Johnny Lynch hired me as a singer.
Okay.
of course, at that time, like I said, it was Milt Buckner across the street at Gracie's Little Belmont. And I got the month of July over there with Milt Buckner to work with him.
Larry Steele.
Larry Steele, yes.
Sorry.
Pinkney Roberts was the guy that had the dance group.
And how about Hortense Allen? Was she in dance?
Oh gosh, yeah. See, they were all incorporated in that.
Right.
The Larry Steele thing. She was the dance instructor.
Right. Sorry.
But during the year of 59 and 60, I was working different places around Philadelphia, different little clubs. And I got an opportunity to work with Harold Corbin. And Harold Corbin was down at Spider Kelly's.
Okay.
Spanky DeBress, Eddie Campbell, Harold Corbin. I got an opportunity to work with Harold Corbin, but Harold didn't want a vocalist. He didn't want a vocalist. He had just made a record, Little Susie, or I think that's what it was called, Little Susie or something like that. And he didn't want a vocalist, but he allowed me to do a Friday and Saturday night when he felt like it down at Spider Kelly's. Unfortunately, the last time I worked with Harold Corbin was on his birthday. And they had a party for him at his best friend's house, Roland Marsh, who was a bartender at Spider Kelly's, that Saturday night. It was March 31st. Maurice St. Clair came by to see me. Asked me did I want to go to Harold Corbin's birthday party at Roland Marsh's apartment in Yorktown, which was in North Philadelphia, and I told him yes. And he took me there. And Harold Corbin died that night. He died on April the 1st, April Fool's Day, 1961.
Wow. Can you describe Spider Kelly's? Because it was pretty important.
It was on Mole Street.
Right.
Real tiny on Mole Street. They had the cement poles on both sides of the street, because I know I wasn't just learning how to drive, but I had a car, and going down Mole Street, it was just a little bit wider than your car, because to come down you really had to be steady so that you wouldn't hit the poles. You came off of Market Street, you made a right, whichever way you came. Well, you had to come from the west, so you'd make a right into Mole Street. Spider Kelly's was, I don't know what was before that, but Spider Kelly's was on the left, and across the street was another little bar or little club, and then they had Kelly's Seafood and Oyster Bar about 4 or 5 doors up from Spider Kelly's, which is on the same side, and then at the end of that block was the Candlelight Room. And at the Candlelight Room, Reggie Jackson's father had a tailor shop. What's that? Randstead or Ludlow Street there in the middle of the block. Because I knew sometimes if I would get pants needed them hemmed or something. But Reggie Jackson, the baseball,
Yeah.
his father had a shop there.
What did the interior of Spider Kelly's look like?
When you walked into it, they had booths on the right-hand side. It was small. They had booths on the right-hand side, and the bar was on the left-hand side. At the end of the bar was a we called them ace deuce tray. That meant one room sat on top of the other because they had a winding stairway that went up to the second floor, which had the entertainment. They had a one large bar, and then the bandstand was in back of the bar. Buddy Caldwell had the Spider Kellys. It was dark. It was had the atmosphere of the Bohemian Caverns, if you've ever been at the Bohemian Caverns. I remember going there a couple of times to see Richard Lawler and Sarah McLawler and Richard Otto. Richard played the jazz violin. And I only saw them there. Milt Buckner played there once with Maurice. And like I said, Richard Otto. And this was like between 59 and, well, after he died, Spanky DeBrest, I don't know who Spanky started playing with, but shortly after that.
Jimmy Oliver was there for quite a while.
Oh, yes. But he never had his own group. He was always there with another group. They would hire him. I remember when Count Basie's orchestra wanted to hire Jimmy Oliver, but Jimmy didn't read music, and that's the reason why he never made it. Listen, I did a job with Jimmy Oliver in Washington, D.C. I don't know who hooked that up.